There's a psychological shift happening right now that's killing creators and they don't even see it coming. Okay. Human attention is fragmenting faster than ever. Information velocity is accelerating and people's brains are just completely overwhelmed. Okay. So if your marketing implies long term commitment, long term effort, long term results, you're kind of dead in the water, right? Because modern buyers have a short term bias hardwired basically into their psychology. They choose immediate reward over delayed reward, even when delayed is better. So when you say in 6 months you'll see results, their subconscious says, I'm good, and they just leave, right? But if you understand how to frame short-term wins that lead to long-term success, if you know how to remove time delay from the value equation, you can exploit this shift and print cash while everyone is still struggling, right? And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that using something called an awareness bridge. So let's start by defining what an awareness bridge actually is. The awareness bridge is the journey that takes a prospect from their current identity to the new identity that's required for them to buy your offer and actually succeed with it. So here's what's happening. Most entrepreneurs think that if they just explain their offer better, if they just show more proof, if they just overcome more objections, people will buy, right? But that's not how humans work. People don't buy because the offer is logical. They buy because their offer fits their identities. And so every sale requires transformation, not just education, right? When a lead doesn't buy, it's not because your offer doesn't make sense. It's because the bridge between their current worldview and yours is missing. So that's what we're going to fix today. But before we can build this bridge, you need to understand why identity matters so much in the first place. And that starts with understanding how the human mind actually makes decisions. You see, there's a huge difference between the conscious and the subconscious mind that most gurus and marketers completely ignore. Okay. Think about an iceberg, right? The conscious mind is that tiny tip above water that's maybe about 5% of what's actually driving behavior. And the subconscious is that massive part underwater. That's 95% of all decisions. Okay. Traditional marketing tries to speak to the conscious mind, logic, information, and features, pricing, right? But the true transformation in buying behavior happens when you speak to the subconscious, where the identity lives, where safety lives, right? Where emotions live. So when you present an offer that requires someone to become a different person, their subconscious throws up red flags and resistance immediately, right? So you have to work with the subconscious, not against it. And working with the subconscious means understanding specific limitations that are holding your prospect back. Because not all resistance is the same, right? There are actually three types of limitations that keep people stuck, and you need to understand which one dominates your audience. I call these the limitation archetypes, right? Number one is worthless. This is I'm not good enough. These people basically don't think they deserve success. Number two is helpless. This is people that say, I can't do it. And these people typically think they lack capability. Number three is hopeless. This is even if I try, it won't work for me. These people think success is possible for others, but not for them, right? And your awareness bridge must identify which limitation is dominant in your audience and then systematically remove it. If you don't address that limitation, the person's subconscious will never allow them to take the next step, regardless of how convincing your logic is. And once you know which limitation you're dealing with, the next question becomes, how do you actually get someone's attention long enough to address it? Okay. It comes down to two psychological principles: contrast and rapport. And you need both in the right sequence. You see, contrast creates attention and people notice the difference. You have to show something surprising, unusual, or opposite to what they expect. It's the pattern interrupt that gets them to stop scrolling and actually pay attention to you, right? But contrast alone isn't enough. So if you're just different, people will notice you, but they won't trust you. Once they're paying attention, though, you need connection through shared experience or some sort of vulnerability. You need to bond with them emotionally, basically. So first, you grab their attention by showing them something different or unexpected. This is the pattern interrupt that makes them stop scrolling and pay attention. Then, once they're looking at you, you connect with them by showing you understand their situation. You share experiences they can relate to, you speak their language. This two-step approach is the foundation of all communication that actually works. So if you skip either step, people either won't notice you or won't trust you enough to listen, right? And once you've got their attention and build that rapport, the awareness bridge's next job is to transform identity. And this is the core of everything. Humans maintain consistency between their internal identity and their external behavior. So If the new behavior, like buying your thing or changing their life, contradicts their current identity, the subconscious will resist it hard, right? Your bridge must provide evidence that adopting the new identity is safe and familiar. And you can do this by demonstrating that people just like them have done it. By showing step-by-step proof of transformation and by using symbolic language to make the new identity tangible, okay? And here's the key principle. Transformation beats information every single time, right? And every single piece of your marketing or content should transform the person's state, not just inform them, but you can't just dump one massive transformation on someone and expect it to stick. Okay, the human brain doesn't work that way. You need to break it down into digestible steps, right? And this brings me to how you structure the actual bridge. Okay, the awareness bridge is not one thing, it's a sequence of 3 to 7 consumption steps. Each step is a piece of content, could be a video, an email, a post. This doesn't really matter, right? What matters is that each step produces a micro transformation. Each one should change one belief, remove one limitation, or show one piece of evidence that they can be the person who succeeds with your thing, right? And you sequence them so that each step logically leads to the next, okay? So every piece should feel like, the natural continuation of the last one. And by the time somebody completes all the steps, they should feel already like a buyer. This transformation should be complete before you ever ask for the sale. But here's where most people screw this up, right? They try to cram too much into each step, overwhelming the prospect's brain and killing the transformation before it can even happen, okay? You have to realize human brains can only process about 45 minutes of information before cognitive fatigue sets in. And after that, you're kind of just wasting words and people start to tune out, right? So you have to break your awareness content into digestible consumption chunks, multiple short transformational steps instead of one giant educational dump, And when you overload people with information, they become mentally exhausted and your close rates will plummet. Think of each chunk as producing a single aha moment. Keep sessions under 45 minutes. If someone needs more education, make it modular with short modules, not just one long lecture. This is also why the old webinar model is dying. Hour-long webinars worked when people had patience and attention, but now people want immediate clarity. They want transformation fast. And if you make them wait 60 minutes to understand why they should buy, you've already lost them. Understanding how to chunk information is crucial, but there's a specific technique that makes identity transformation even more powerful, and most people have never really heard of it. It's called the "Who am I when reframing" question. So instead of asking someone to imagine the outcome, you ask, "Who am I when I achieve this?" or "Who am I not when I achieve this?" Okay, so these questions force the subconscious to basically gather new evidence that redefines their self-image. And when they see themselves as the person who already embodies the outcome, resistance collapses. Okay, this technique invites the subconscious to basically collect evidence that supports the transformation rather than rejecting it. And here's what I mean. Here's a little example. If you ask someone, imagine being fit, they picture themselves differently, right? But if you ask, who are you when you're fit? They start listing identity characteristics. And this technique is powerful, but only works if you're delivering it through the right story structure, because stories are kind of how humans naturally process identity transformation. Every story in your awareness bridge should basically follow the same pattern, right? Limitation, realization, transformation, and identity adoption. So you start with your past limitation. I used to believe I couldn't sell because I wasn't naturally persuasive. Then you share your realization. Then I discovered selling isn't about persuasion, it's about identity. Then you show the transformation. I stopped perfecting my pitch and started transforming how prospects see themselves before making any offer. And then finally, you reveal your new identity. Now I'm someone who sells easily because I prepare people psychologically to want what I have to offer. And this works because your prospect sees themselves in your past limitation, right? They think that's exactly my problem. When they see that you overcame the same challenge, they believe they can too. And this creates deep emotional rapport because the prospect basically recognizes themselves in your story and they see their current limitation as your past limitation. And then they follow you across the bridge because if it worked for you, maybe it'll work for them. This is basically bonding over past limitations and it builds massive trust, right? But there's a dangerous trap that kills this rapport before it even starts. And I see marketers and gurus fall into it constantly. In fact, a lot of VSLs and sales messages start with, you're lazy or you're doing it wrong or, you're failing because of this. right? When you attack someone's identity, their subconscious goes in kind of like this defense mode, and now you have to fight through that resistance before you can start selling. Okay, you're creating identity friction before you've basically built any rapport. Okay, so best practice is to lead with positive framing and then gently dip into a negative to create some sort of contrast. Okay, start with you're ambitious, but here's why your effort really hasn't paid off yet. Okay, establish that safety first, make them feel seen and understood. And this way you're saying, you're not the problem, this strategy is the problem. And that kind of allows them to shift without feeling attacked. You're giving them basically permission to change without making them feel bad about where they are now. Getting this framing right is especially important when you think about, where most of this transformation needs to happen, okay? And spoiler, it's not on your sales calls. So if your funnel dumps all the education into the sales call, you're doing it wrong. The awareness content should prime emotion and identity before the call, not teach everything, right? The sales call should feel like a continuation of the transformation, not a brand new educational session. If someone shows up to a call and you're spending 45 minutes teaching them everything they need to know, that means your awareness bridge failed, basically. They should show up already seeing themselves as the person who succeeds with your offer, okay? And the job of the sales rep is to basically validate what they already know and close, not to convince. The heavy lifting happened before the call through the awareness bridge. The call is just basically the next natural step. So now that you understand what needs to happen externally in your funnel, let's go deeper on what's actually happening inside someone's mind during this transformation. Because the better you understand the mechanics, the better you can design the bridge, right? Okay, so the first concept is resistance removal. When people don't understand you, they resist you. So you basically have to simplify and say it differently until it clicks. Think of your message like a race car, You want to remove anything that slows it down or creates resistance. Just like engineers remove unnecessary parts from a race car to reduce drag. You should eliminate confusing jargon, unnecessary details, and complicated explanations from your marketing. So ask yourself, does this word, sentence, or paragraph actually help my prospect move closer to understanding and buying? Or does it create friction? And if it creates friction, remove it. This will make your message very clear, faster to understand, generally much more effective. Now, when people understand you instantly, they're much more likely to keep reading and eventually buy, right? Second is the mind shadows framework. So here's how the mind actually works. Thoughts become beliefs, beliefs become identity, and identity sits on top of your true self. It's layers, so you can't change what you can't see, right? When you name thoughts and feelings, you objectify them, right? This creates psychological distance. It's the same subconscious mechanism that the awareness bridge tries to trigger externally. You're basically helping people see their limitations as separate from who they are, okay? And once they can see it, they can change it, right? Third is belief validation. So every belief self-validates people and collects evidence that proves what they already believe. This is called confirmation bias, and it's incredibly powerful. So change happens by forcing validation in a new direction, and you help them shift from I am X to I used to be X, right? This is an internal version of the identity bridge process. Fourth goal is integration. You want to align their thoughts, beliefs, and emotions toward one symbol or word, right? And this unifies their internal identity so the external transformation feels coherent and natural. When everything points to the same direction, change becomes easy instead of hard, right? Now let me talk about what's happening in the market, because this is why the awareness bridge matters more now than ever before. Human attention and information velocity online are accelerating like crazy. People's brains are overwhelmed. They're scrolling through hundreds of pieces of short form content every day, and their attention is split across 10 different platforms. This fragmentation strategy means you need to break long content into micro pieces, obviously. One long video doesn't work anymore, right? 3 short videos work better. And there's also an energy and attention economy happening. Time, money, and energy are finite, right? Audiences pay with attention first, not cash. They're giving you their attention before they give you their money, right? And you have to respect that attention is scarce and valuable. But the fragmentation of attention isn't the only shift killing marketers and gurus right now. There's an even bigger psychological shift that most people are completely blind to. In fact, most people have a short-term bias and they choose immediate reward over delayed reward, right? So $10 today feels better than $100 later, even though logically that doesn't make sense. This is hardwired into human psychology. So if your copy implies long-term commitment, long-term effort, long-term results, resistance rises automatically. And you have to frame benefits as short-term results that lead to long-term success. Okay, don't say in 6 months you'll have a successful business. Break it down in weeks. Fractionalize it. Right? Try to give them immediate wins that naturally evolve into long-term value. Okay, show them, the first transformation happens fast. Show them the first result is immediate, because once they get that first win, the long-term journey doesn't feel scary anymore. This is not about lying or promising overnight success. It's about framing, right? It's about showing them the first step is easy, the first result is fast, and the first transformation is immediate, right? You're basically removing the time delay limitation, and removing that time delay becomes even more powerful when you combine it with the next principle, which changes how you present everything in your marketing. Okay, so this is the show then tell principle. When you show someone something before you explain it, you reduce cognitive drag and increase conversion. Okay, don't tell people how it works and then show them. Show them it works, and then they'll want to know how. Okay, so think about magic tricks, right? The magician doesn't explain the trick and then do it. They do the trick first and then blow your mind, and then only then maybe do they explain how it worked, right? So your marketing should work the same way. You show the result, show the transformation, show the proof, then explain the mechanism. Okay, showing instead of telling is powerful, because there's a specific way to structure what you're showing that makes the bridge even shorter and more effective. Okay, replace heavy learning template scripts and dumb for you assets. Shorten the bridge by doing more for them, right? People want to learn, they want results. So the less learning required and the more doing you can handle for them, the faster they cross the bridge, right? And the higher your conversions go. So if your offer requires them to learn Facebook ads, for example, creating landing pages, writing email sequences, and building a funnel, right? That's a lot of capability they need. That's a lot of potential helplessness limitations. But if you give them the landing page template and the email swipe files and the funnel blueprint, you've removed those limitations. You've actually shortened the bridge dramatically. Now that you understand all the principles, let me give you the exact step-by-step process to build this thing. Okay, so Step 1, map the target identity and limitations. List what the prospect currently believes about themselves, okay? Are they worthless? Are they helpless or hopeless? Decide which you'll attack, right? Step 2, define the end state transformation. Describe new identity with capabilities, lifestyle, and feelings they should have at the end of the bridge. Step 3, create 3 to 7 consumption steps, each equaling one small transformation. Change a belief, show new evidence, demonstrate capability. Every piece must be transformative, not just informative. Okay. Step 4, use story plus personal limitation matching. Okay. So start with, I used to think X, which shows your limitation. Then here's how I found out X wasn't true. Then a micro demonstration or proof. Then the symbolic identity statement. Step 5, pacing and chunking. So avoiding dumping all education into the sales call, deliver the most awareness before the call, right? If someone needs education, make it modular. Step 6, craft your VSL and sales letter openings carefully. Avoid negative identity attacks and use a positive hook. Then pivot into the friction you solve. Okay, if a VSL is performing poorly, check for identity attacking openings or requests that ask for premature change. Step 7, design the sales call as the next step, not the teacher. The sale should be short. People who cross the awareness bridge should ask for the solution on the call. Okay. And your reps should focus on validation and close rather than reteaching. And having the recipe is one thing, right? But you need to know what good performance actually looks like. Otherwise, you're just guessing. For booking rates, one booked call per 100 customers is baseline. 3% is pretty damn good. With group formats, you can push towards 8%. And I've seen high-performing upsell achieve 10% bookings, but that was very exceptional. Obviously, everything was dialed. The offer matched the audience perfectly. The awareness bridge was working. The messaging was very good. And use these as testing baselines. If you're below 1%, something's broken along the path. If you're above 3%, you're doing well, right? And these metrics matter because they tell you if your awareness bridge is working properly. If people aren't booking calls, your bridge content isn't transforming them. If they're booking but not buying, your bridge got them part way but not all the way. So now you've got all the individual pieces. Let me show you how they all fit together into one cohesive system. Creating an awareness bridge establishes how transformation happens psychologically and structurally. That's the foundation. Then you apply that model to modern fragmented attention and short term psychology in your funnel execution. You understand the internal identity transformation through bridge theory. You improve the messaging, clarity, and resistance removal through show then tell. And then you adapt to audience psychology through short term framing. Okay. The awareness bridge is a transformational sequence of videos, emails, or consumption pieces that moves a prospect from their current identity and limitations into a new identity that already embodies the solution you sell. The bridge works through creating contrast to attract attention, building rapport through shared limitations and storytelling, and removing perceived limitations around time and capability, and identity, and pacing consumption. So, the sales conversion becomes a natural next step rather than an educational marathon, right? And if you don't start building bridges now, you're going to get left behind because the market isn't slowing down, right? So attention is fragmenting, information velocity is accelerating, and buying decisions are moving further into the subconscious based on identity and emotion instead of logic and features. And if you're still trying to sell with long educational content, with logic heavy presentations, with feature dumps and benefit lists, you're going to struggle because that's not how people buy anymore. But if you understand how to build an awareness bridge, if you understand how to transform identity through micro steps, if you understand how to remove limitations and create contrast and build rapport and frame for short-term psychology, you're going to win big. So here's what I want you to do. Go back to your current funnel, look at your content, and ask yourself, is this informing or transforming? Then start building your awareness bridge using the recipe I gave you. Map the limitations, define the new identity, create the consumption steps, use the story and transformation instead of education and logic. This is the framework that's working right now, and it's the framework that'll keep working as the market continues to shift. And if you do implement this, you're going to be way ahead of everyone else in your market for a long time. But anyways, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to work with me, please check the link in the description and book a call. Thanks.